Welcome to the Talking Security podcast. We will talk about items related to Microsoft security. Hello, welcome again at a new recording of the Talking Security podcast. And today we're kicking off a new series of recordings that we are doing with us three and us who are us. So my name is Frans Oudendorp and I will host this podcast together with...
Yes, my name is Pouyan Khabazi. And
I am Sander ten Brinke.
So with the three of us, we are diving in DevSecOps. And that's a new topic that we will try to cover within the next few episodes to see from 3 points of view to see what happens in a world where developers, security, but also operations came in, isn't it, Pouyan?
Yeah, definitely. I think the task behind this podcast series is to give a good understanding and discuss some known issues that we see with our customers on our daily work for ourselves, to tackle those, to discuss them with 3 different backgrounds and see, is it solvable? Can we do anything about it? And what can we do about it?
Before we dive in, who do we have on the table? Most of the people know me already because I host this podcast for a long time already. My name is Frans Oudendorp, freelance consultant, architect within the workplace security area. So advising companies how to manage a workplace, how to secure them so every user in that organization can work secure on the data and on the stuff that is used within the company. Besides that, a Microsoft MVP and love to record stuff with this gear. So active in the community for Workplace Ninjas, doing this Talking Security podcast, but also helping Experts Live, Workplace Ninja Summit, and other conference to be organized. That's me. Sander.
Sure. My turn. So I'm Sander ten Brinke. I'm a senior .NET developer for Arcadie. So I do a lot of consulting in companies, building applications with .NET, Azure solutions, stuff like that. Also Microsoft MVP. So I like to blog on my website. I like to go to conferences. I haven't been to one that you've hosted yet, so maybe in the future. And since a couple of months, I like talking on podcasts. So I'm glad to be here.
Let's see what the future brings within this episodes. I'm really looking forward to it. We have another one, Pouyan. Yeah. You're still the last one, but not the least. We're doing together Defender for Cloud series for this Talking Security podcast.
Yeah.
So people may already know you, but what are you doing in your normal day job?
Yeah, so we are doing in parallel the Defender for Cloud series to get more awareness on the whole cloud, containerization, APIs, DevOps. I'm the co-founder of Advance. We are a managed security service provider in the Netherlands, located in Rotterdam. Fully Microsoft focused. So we do a lot with Microsoft Sentinel, Defender for Cloud, and 365 Defender. I do a lot of talks on some of the sessions and events that you discussed, mostly on Sentinel, Defender for Cloud topics, more the modern application, and that's something I'm really interested in. I'm also Microsoft MVP on security. So it's I think with this expertise at this table, I think we have a really great opportunity to bring all those knowledge together from all those backgrounds. So I think, I'm really looking forward to this. Definitely with Sander, our developer to it.
Yeah, we had some thoughts in the past doing together. I've been in the workplace area for a long time. Pouyan is in more or less data center activities and nowadays security. So the things that we thought of was, how could it be if we add some developer usage to that and see if we can do something with that? And that's the reason why we have you on the table. And
I feel so honored.
and let's see if we can make and a couple of information that we have facing in the past, but also maybe in the future, and to elaborate a little bit on that. Before diving into the first topic that we want to discuss this today, what do we want to achieve with this recording? Do we have any thoughts about that?
Well, from my perspective as a developer, I think it would be really good to, like, if other developers are listening as well, development has gotten like more difficult, more complex with cloud stuff and all that, all these new things that we're working with. And I definitely see that things like security and like working together with operations can be kind of difficult. It's a whole new area for us to think about, because it's kind of, DevSecOps is a thing that needs to be cared about by everyone in those respective teams. And so I would really like to kind of talk about specific subjects here and like make the developers have a bit more and just get more information about all of these different areas and how to work with them and things to pay attention to.
How's that for you, Pouyan?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the whole key. Because what you see is a lot of organizations, companies are going towards the cloud, and with cloud, suddenly everything becomes development. You have like infrastructure development, you have application development, you have like no code or low code solutions. So everything going towards from a physical data center where we were used to servers, making that switch. Definitely in our last episode, we also talked about the risks with APIs, for example, right?
Yep.
Because due to the increase of it, like our countries like Australia are having regulations for it now. So I think taking all those challenges into consideration, and definitely with the shift towards the cloud, it's so important to bring those three groups together so that they can enrich each other instead of blocking each other or instead of stopping innovation, because innovation is at the end the key of the organization. That's their purpose. So I think for me that the goal will be to get a clear understanding on, definitely if we go deeper on the developer side, like how certain integrations would be possible, and like if I can already discuss, but things like managed identity. How do you do identity in cloud? Because and definitely topics on zero trust and that kind of, I think those are relevant instead of just saying zero cloud. Like what does it mean for the developers, operation and security?
If we look at the topics that we want to discuss, the first topic what we want to discuss a little bit on is the workplace, the developer workplace, and how we can achieve certain security that is necessary we are putting a lot of security stuff on the normal workplace, but how can we achieve that on a developer workplace? That will be the first topic. What are the other topics for the next few episodes? We have some thoughts, but that can be changed in if there is a certain topic. There was something in the news last week or the week before about NuGet packages that were vulnerable.
Yeah. So I think last week I read that somewhere on Reddit or something about a NuGet package that was found to be quite malicious and was in use by a lot of other packages. And well, this happens a lot in other ecosystems like NPM, but it is quite rare to find something like this in the .NET ecosystem with NuGet. So the community was kind of shaken up by it. And I found that a very interesting topic to talk about. That is that in days like this, where everything is like integrated with each other with DevOps and stuff, this thing can really ruin a company or ruin a product really quickly if this is not in check.
Yeah, we have seen that a year ago or so. What was it?
Was it Log4j, you mean? yeah.
Something with Java.
Exactly.
But I think that's exactly the key, because at those times, I think you experienced that as well. And we had like customers that went to security.microsoft and said, okay, this is what's vulnerable, these servers are vulnerable, and everything else not. And you had like organizations that needed to go with all the servers one by one and then check them. And then they upgraded it, and then suddenly there was a second vulnerability. So,
But that could be one of the topics. So it could be an actual topic that is in the news, for example. Are there any other things that we want to discuss?
Yeah, so we are. If you look at the DevSecOps, one of the ideas that we discussed, like you have different phases, right? You have the first phase where it's planning, where the architecture comes in place. Like if you start there, because often a lot of security misconfiguration or vulnerabilities come from the design, because not the right people have checked the design.
So you're saying it's my fault?
Yeah, it's always the developer. So and then from there, like going forward and then looking on the coding side, like exactly what you meant with using external NuGet packages, for example. Yeah. What can we do about it? Yeah. What can we have in place?
Yeah. What do you need to be kind of considerate about, right? Lots of developers like to install and use all of these packages because everything is done for me, It's so much easier, but no one really thinks about this dependency, uses this dependency, uses that dependency, and that one's vulnerable. And then the entire chain, is kind of broken. And that kind of stuff. So really also like from a developer perspective, and then we can also move on to the security perspective. Like how would the security side of the DevSecOps want to deal with this? And where, the developer side might say, hey, I just want to be able to use all these NuGet packages because the client wants the product tomorrow. And the security is in my way. So where's the middle ground here? How do you solve this problem?
They have drawn a lot of cartoons for that kind of things because the user wants it yesterday.
Exactly.
We can deliver it next week, but to have it somewhat in between, it's sometimes hard. Let's see. If we dive in to the first topic, the developer workplace, all the other topics will be discussed in the next few episodes that we will be recording. But what about the workplace? I have an example. I worked at a company a few years ago to implement Defender for Endpoint with all the security stuff, ASR, attack surface reduction rules, and so on. But the developers are using virtualization software like Sun VirtualBox or Hyper-V or VMware. What is it called? VMware Workstation and that kind of stuff. And if you activate attack surface reduction rules, there are a few of them that are requiring virtualization. Credential guard, for example, or some others.
Do you also mean stuff like, would Docker then still work? Do you know that? Because that would also definitely impact like the my side here, right?
It could be. Well, I do not have the experience with that customer. At that customer was some VirtualBox, VMware Workstation that were running. But they were broken after the Defender and attack surface reduction was enrolled. So the security measures that you are implementing at a customer, it could definitely broke a developer workplace. So how to deal with that? Also from a management perspective. So you need to test it and so on and so on. So definitely, but in the end, what most of the times happens is that, the developer workplace, let's exclude them from everything, and they manage it on their own. And if we are going that way, it's quite hard to have a security posture that is optimal in your environment. So if you look at the developers, it's sometimes hard to achieve, to implement everything. But if you are on the other side, Sander, what are your thoughts when I come within your company to help your organization to get your security posture on a higher level?
I mean, I've had this exact. Well, I wouldn't call it a problem. I've had this exact situation at one of my former clients, and then it was also like I was just, I was logging into my computer. It did not have BitLocker installed and stuff like that, and I was using Visual Studio. I could run stuff as admin, and I could just do my work. And then the security came in and said, okay, so now we're going to now enable BitLocker on your computer. So every time you start it, you have to enter that annoying PIN code. And you want to install Python? Well, you have to send the help desk an email that you want to install this malicious software because we don't know what that is. And it's like, just let me do my job. It is really, to me, it was very important on how it is introduced. And also, if you are going to make the stuff more secure, which is, of course, very important, how do you communicate it and how do you plan it in? Like, if you just wake up one day and suddenly your entire workstation is gone because you're no longer allowed to run, I don't know, some debugging software that you need because it's not assigned by Microsoft or something like that. It is very much more secure, but it also has a really big impact on my work, which I think should be communicated a lot better. I think a lot more investigation should take place.
Yeah, and most of the times, if you are developing, you need to compile software and so on. So it is not signed at that moment.
Exactly.
So you need to compile it to have it signed, so you can enroll it in your organization.
Exactly.
So but as a developer, you're in the front row, and if you are assigning all the attack surface reduction rules, for example, you have a big issue because you can't do your work anymore.
Exactly.
What we see in general at that moment is that most of the developers, I will put out my laptop completely from the organization's tenant domain or whatever, and then it's a single device. The developer is managing on his own stuff, but the company data, the code, but also documents that is here working on, are on a non-managed device. So we have potentially an issue on that. Yeah. How to handle that? Is there a solution of, for example, with code? Is there something to realize if we are going that way? So I'm managing the complete workplace. The developer is spinning up virtual machines to do stuff with, so he can work. Do we have tools in our hands to manage the data? And I do not mean the documents, but more in general the code that's using.
Yeah, I think the code part and accessing it from which device is a topic that's often not realized by a lot of organizations. But I think I completely agree with you. It's a really big concern because the moment that you access the repository of a customer and you make your Git clone, it's gone.
Technically, yeah.
And you don't have any purview, Microsoft purview that you monitor your data or files where they are. So for that, there are some solutions like GitHub Copilot or Codespaces, excuses, where you get an editor in your browser, if I'm correct.
Yeah, in your browser, yeah. You get it in your browser, and it is cool, but as a developer, it also...
It stays at cool, right? It's cool.
Keep your hands off my computer. It's, it's like, it's my machine. I want to do all the cool stuff. And it is a good idea, but it is still quite new.
But would it be then to before we dive into the whole attack surface, would it be for a developer acceptable when you start a project at a customer that the customer provides their device that's configured with their environment policies, taking in assumption that it's configured correctly for the developer, right? So with the right configuration or as much as possible. Because then you can start, of course, doing things with conditional access.
Yeah,
definitely with Azure DevOps and GitHub, you can restrict accessing those applications from non-managed devices.
Yeah, but I've had that at a previous client as well. So I was basically like logging 2 laptops with me every day, which is okay. Like the laptop from my employer and then the laptop from the client. And it definitely works. Like I'm not really complaining about that all that much. I had the access I needed, and if I needed more, I could contact the help desk. You do need to pay attention though, because the laptop that we got was kind of the same laptop that Janet from reception got. So whenever I tried to run like 2 Docker containers and Visual Studio, the laptop just slowed down to a crawl. And at that point, you just see people just kind of whipping out their own laptops, maybe grabbing a USB stick, putting the code on it, putting the code on the other laptop, and actually do their work. So it is definitely an option. However, maybe it's more of a question for you guys then, because then how is it then really possible if I were to clone the code on my machine? How do you then prevent that stuff from leaking? Because couldn't I still put it in a USB stick? How is that couldn't I still put it on a USB stick and walk away with it? Like, is there also ways to defend that kind of situation?
So I think that the idea behind it is that once you are working on a managed device, the organization has access to restrict or monitor certain behaviors. So maybe they don't block the fact that you copied something to a USB stick, right? But it's definitely, if we dive into Defender and Defender portal with a timeline, it's completely registered what activities what user have done. So those activities would be, for example,
you can block. If it's your own devices, the device is not managed, then it's quite hard.
Yeah.
But if it's a managed device, then we have full insights from Defender first. But also, if you look at all the logging that is coming from a Defender for Endpoint agent, with Gusto, you can dive in every single piece and you can see what happens with code that files that are copied. With Insider Risk, that's another one within the Purview suite. With Insider Risk, you can also view what things are copied. But if it's a managed device, you have the opportunity to block USB devices and especially storage devices. So you can put in a storage device onto a managed device, but you can't use it because it's not detected anymore.
That's also, or maybe it's like not allowed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you could have like company USB sticks, company external hard drives and stuff like that. Those are signed some way. Those you can use those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's based on the serial, the hardware hash that's on. I think it's a hardware hash, but I'm not quite sure. But there is an indicator that can be used to make it a trusted device. So if you put that in a managed laptop, then you can use it as a managed USB stick, for example. And also with BitLocker, to go on it, you can make it a bit more secure. Yeah. But it's still a storage device that can be moved out.
Yep.
But on the other hand, if you are using conditional access with probably GitHub, but also others, if you are allowed to use that data on a non-trusted device, then that's an issue. If you are using that on a trusted, managed device, then you can use it on your own. And the only way how you can achieve data on your laptop, on that non-managed device, could be copying it within an email, like a USB stick, probably. But if there's always a way.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it really depends on like how far do you want to go. Because there was a discussion on Reddit about this some time ago, and people were like, so how can we like make sure that my employer says that developers should be able to work on the code, and then when they close it, they no longer can see the code. And I was like, well, you can just take a picture on your screen. I mean, you could pour cement in the USB ports. It doesn't really matter what you do. I mean, it really depends on how far you want to go in this.
That's always the discussion with information protection. With information protection in general, you're closing a document, you make a with Azure Information Protection, or how is it called today?
Microsoft Entra? No, I don't know.
No,
Something
no.
with Entra. No.
But information protection, you have the opportunity to encrypt a specific file, and I can send you the file. You can't access that file if you aren't allowed to it. But if I'm allowed, I can take a picture.
Exactly.
And
you can write it down.
It's always, there's always an escape. But if you want to do, if data is secured and you need to take 1 or 3 steps extra, it's quite a bit harder. So there is probably less information that can be leaked.
Yeah.
There's still, that can be, we have seen that at ASML, for example, some people from abroad, from China, came there to work. They were inside the company, and then there was data leaked. Yeah, if someone is working there, you can still use the data, and you can bring it somewhere where you want if you have access to the data.
I guess it also is important, like from a developer perspective, like if I think of like data, I'm either thinking of like boring SharePoint documentation, or maybe from my perspective, a lot more like, code and stuff like that. So if we're saying like, we don't want our developers to steal code. Well, to me, code is not very secret. I mean, just code itself is just kind of boring. It's just some numbers on the screen or some characters on the screen. The most important things are like the things like secrets, right? Like the connections to your external systems, connections to financial systems, to messaging systems. You don't want those to be, you don't want those to leak. So then to me, it's very important, like put those credentials somewhere very, very safe, and make sure that developers don't even need to have those on their devices. Make sure that they can just connect their local machine to the cloud, and they don't need to, when they're setting up their code, they don't even need to store them on their device itself, so they can't even leak. If you want those to leak, you actually have to have access to the Azure cloud, or maybe someone was looking at it and you have to take a picture of it. Those are such weird scenarios, those are not even really worth mentioning.
For credentials, probably that's the case.
Yeah.
If you're in general code, everyone could, not everyone, but if you are a developer, you can create code, and probably you can copy. If you see an application, you can make your own of it. You don't need the code, but if you have the backend, and then it could be probably a little bit different. But if we look at the developer endpoint, the workplace, if we want to achieve some security, there is definitely a need to make some enhancements that are different than the normal users, in my opinion.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I definitely think that developers, they don't necessarily need more freedom. I guess it really depends on the workplace itself. If I'm really working with like virtual machines, like you say, I think my machine needs to have more capabilities than the one from reception. The one from reception can probably be locked down completely. But it's also very important to then take a look, like if we're really going to have to lock everything down, maybe we need to switch from virtual machines to another solution, like a Docker or something else that doesn't require all that deep virtualization.
Yeah.
So you want to develop, but we also really want to develop in a secure manner. Yeah. And then you just need to kind of change your entire development culture about that as well.
But that's a good point, because I had a conversation about it a couple of weeks ago. It's like you can integrate your EDA with a Docker container, right? Where you do the build and that kind of steps through the container. But don't we create by implementing those solutions again a black hole? Because as security and operations, we don't have any visibility of what happens into that environment. The same is like with Windows subsystems. I don't know how far they are now, but relying on the Windows subsystem is still not part of Defender, if I'm correct.
Do you mean like stuff like WSL? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
No.
I'm not really sure.
I don't know at the moment. It's not on top of my mind.
So do we then create... do we move the risks to somewhere else? Because then you say, okay, dear developer, we are going to lock down your laptop, but we are going to give you the possibility to run Docker containers, and then you can build your application in a Docker container.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like if we were to do something like that. I think that is at least for a developer perspective. At least if we're thinking of, hey, we're going to bring security into the workplace because that is a thing that's often neglected. If we're saying, okay, we're moving virtual machines to Docker, to me, that would be a benefit. Because, I mean, I am going to be able to use more modern systems like Docker to instead of like using old VMs. I'm not really sure how visible it is in like the management perspective, like the ops perspective, the security perspective, how you can monitor that kind of stuff. But I think it would be beneficial. And risk-wise, again, then if I'm doing dark things on my machine that you can't monitor, then I think it is a good thing to think about, like, what am I doing and what can I do? Like if I am able to use company resources and do weird things with that I shouldn't be able to do, then I think I should not have any access to that kind of data.
So do you then also agree that in general, the modern way of development is also going more towards using container kind of solutions for build and testing on your laptop? So that we really, as security and operation, need to focus on that element, because I think it's currently used a lot like a way of a workaround, right? Because as developer, you can do your thing, and as security can keep its policy generic over the whole environment. But listening to you are pointing out that okay, that's part of the changes that in the way of working of developers.
Yeah,
so
I think that if we want to improve security and stuff like that, then I definitely agree with security that, for example, I should not be able to run if it's required for the workplace and I need to run like 20 different VMs, and security is like, yeah, but you really don't need to do that because we can't manage the security on that. Then I definitely agree. Okay, let's find a solution here. But I also want to be able to, I would prefer to be able to still use my machine. Docker could maybe help with this kind of stuff, like building your applications in Docker environments, if that's also what you were kind of using VMs for. I guess definitely Docker and stuff is already very popular nowadays with all the building the containers and hosting the containers in the cloud. I think if we're looking towards the future and like integrating security, I think we're definitely going to have to go back to that entire topic of like GitHub code spaces and JetBrains Fleet. I think is also a kind of a new addition and stuff like that. You have lots of those products nowadays that you just open a browser, you code in there, and yeah, you could probably still copy the code into Notepad and still keep it. But the entire idea is that the code doesn't need to leave the server, and it's all company managed. And it is still pretty new, so I have some experience with it. I didn't really like it all that much. It's still, I don't have the same power that I currently have. And I think it's a cycle. I think the further it goes, I think we're kind of heading in towards that direction. And then developers
web-based development.
Yeah, I think so. I think that over time, for like just normal applications, I think that's definitely a good idea. As long as developers still kind of have the same energy, the same powers that they have before, where security can also have more of an influence there. I think then both parties are really happy.
I think there are two things on GitHub code spaces, for example. If you look at the infra developers, the infra as code and so on, I think that can be used in code spaces quite good. If you're developing applications and you need to compile and so on, then it could be quite harder to use it at the moment. Yeah. So I think for 30% of the people that are using a GitHub, 30, 40, maybe it's different, but for the infrastructure developers.
Yeah, like infrastructure as code and kind of stuff like that. Yeah, then I think it's absolutely perfect. Yeah, I think if you're talking about like I'm building like a mobile app or I'm building like a desktop app, I don't really actually know if GitHub Codespace is a good use for that right now, because you really want to, run the applications on your machine and it runs in the browser. Don't really know if that works that well.
That's it.
But I can imagine in the future it would be. Of course, another thing that we could definitely talk about is like instead of like running the code on my machine, I'm going to use something like Microsoft DevBox or like Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yeah. That's also something that we at least a question or is offered as a solution a lot of time. But
Yeah, related to that, at the Workplace Ninja Summit, I had a talk with Michael van Horenbeek and Sergey Chubarov about privileged access workstation. Privileged access workstation is designed for an admin to do privileged tasks within a company environment. Like it's way old because that was in the past used to manage Active Directory in an on-prem environment. But nowadays it can also be implemented in a cloud scenario. That's for privileged actions. If we look at developing could be privileged.
Yeah.
If you're using credentials to backend systems, it could be a privileged action. That is there a way to have that you have your normal device, you're doing your email stuff and so on, that you're doing that on your normal device, and you have a second device that could be an Azure Virtual Desktop, that could be what else, to do your code activities, your development activities.
I mean, I have colleagues and stuff that have to use those solutions, and while they work, I often also hear them just kind of cursing in the background because it doesn't really work all that well yet. If your internet connection is bad, it's super laggy. Yeah. If you and it's just sometimes can be so annoying to have to open another, you have to open your laptop, you have to connect to a VM, and guess what? In that VM, you have to connect to another VM to access a test database, or like just VMs all the way down, or like virtual desktops, I guess I should say. So I think like it's kind of the same idea as code spaces. Again, we're just we're using the cloud to code on, so things can be managed better. While I think that is the future right now for development, I'm not really happy with the state where it's currently at. No. I definitely think for like lots of small, like a lot of like the infra is, I see infra, people that do infra as code are also developers, I think. But it's for subsections. I think it works, but for the rest, it still needs to go for quite a while until I think it's really in the mainstream.
Yeah, I think also to add to that is from security aspect, because we are also having a lot of conversations with customers, right? To bring that to account thoughts, like you have a user account and an admin account, to bring that back to one and use PIM and that kind of solutions. And to be honest, from my side, my preference would also go to one device, because if you go to an Azure Virtual Desktop, for example, it has a certain time lifestamp, so you can go there, you can do things, and then it's gone, and then and it's really hard, much harder at least, once you are investigating an incident, to point out, okay, this developer was working from that machine, but was logged on that machine. So it's going to be a much harder than saying, okay, no, that's his endpoint or her endpoint, and was working from there. And this is all the activities that happened. And my preference would be seeing at least what happened and being able to, as a security researcher or as an incident responder, when you are doing your response analysis, to be able to see that in one environment instead of going from machine to machine to machine, and then because you did something there and then something there, and then so I think that it lacks. It's an idea, but it doesn't solve the problem. It moves the problem to somewhere else.
You could also see it from like another perspective. As a consultant, so I go to the clients and work there, and I bring my own laptop. You could also say that people that work internally at the company, use a company-provided laptop or a company-provided desktop, whereas I'm provided with like a Microsoft DevBox or an Azure Virtual Desktop. So I can still use the company, my own laptop, but I connect to their resources using my laptop. If I leave the company, they disconnect the access. And for internal employees that just work there, I think it could be a lot easier to manage just those devices itself. Would also really stop breaking my back having to carry 2 laptops.
Yep.
I had a colleague in the past that had to carry 3 laptops. The third laptop was just one to register the hours on, because it was so locked down that the third laptop he had to bring on Friday just to register his hours on. And it was years ago, but I still remember it because it's just you don't want to do that.
No.
Other question, Pouyan. You are running a business with SOC analysts doing stuff for customers. How hard is it for a security analyst to do some research on the developers? Because if you're already mentioning it, if they are hopping to other systems, but if they are still on their own system, they are using tools that most of the time not known by a lot of security people. They are developing, so it's could be generate some incidents that are related to hack activities, but they are normal in their day job.
Yeah.
So what about the security analyst, and is there a possibility to make their to move them out of the normal group, so to say?
So I think once it comes to the security analyst, I think one of the biggest differences is that we use a lot of Defender suite for protection part, right? And that generates a lot of great visibility, like from it as well. But if you go to the timeline of a developer's machine, it's like noisy because so much happens there. So that's, I think, one of the keys. It makes it harder to find the right activity. And the hard thing is, I mean, it's good to have security analyst with an IT background, because you see also our organizations having security analysts that do not really understand the IT in the general, like the PC form and the data center and the whole ideas behind it. They will be having a more hard time because they see because if you do a build on your machine, you see something calling an executable, that executable calls something else, and then that calls something else. There's a lot happening behind the screens that you as a developer or as an end user don't see that. So that helps a lot by training your analyst so that they understand what that means. So they have that ET knowledge, understanding of those executables. So those are, I think, again, it depends. We have like some organizations that we work with, like the developers use a lot Docker integration. Like then it becomes a black hole.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, what happens, because if you attach your VS Code, for example, to Docker,
the remote Docker stuff.
Yeah,
stuff like that,
locally even, and then it's all running in that Docker container.
I'm gonna start using Docker for everything now.
So, but I think, and I noted it because we are planning to do a podcast with for Defender for containers and Kubernetes. I mean, it's a great feature that Microsoft provided, but as far as I know at the moment, it's not supported for the on-prem Docker containers like running, but I'm really curious. I mean, this is a great question to the PM. Like, is this not something that we should be thinking of? Because you say it's the usage of containerization on a developer's machine is going to increase.
Oh, it is already, like, it's basically in every company nowadays, and it's just happening more and more and more. Yeah, definitely.
So shouldn't we already be injecting there and starting monitoring there?
I think so. I'm quite surprised by the fact that you say that wouldn't work. Like I don't really focus much on the security side. I definitely pay attention to it during development, and I also do DevOps stuff. So I kind of keep an eye on the chain. But I really didn't expect that kind of stuff wouldn't have worked for Docker, because I feel it's such a vital part of developing nowadays. And it is also, like, if you look at the entire attack chain of the applications, developing and building your code or stuff like that is a very good way to attack a certain product or company that I would expect monitoring to already exist.
Yeah. You see an increase definitely we see definitely an increase with some customers, more enterprise customers that are really going towards that DevSecOps and are embracing that security monitoring and placing that by if it is on the local side, right? You have like a lot of non-Microsoft vendors that provide security solutions that you can run, and they are integrated with your EDA, where you do code scanning before you commit your code.
Yeah.
GitHub is doing that as well.
GitHub Advanced Security in the badly named GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps. It's like
something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. It's an absolute. I'm really happy that such a thing is introduced, and I also really think for security, that's also a really, really good thing to be able to use.
Yeah. We talked with one of the PMs about DevOps security. Probably we can do that another time, but maybe within this setting, from our perspectives as well. So let's see if we can create a topic of that.
Sure.
To wrap it up. We have a workplace that is normally managed for the normal users. For the developers, we make some other choices, but it's not necessary to leave them completely open.
No, definitely not. I think it's definitely a good idea to lock it down a little bit more. But what I often see is that, we're doing security now and tomorrow your entire laptop is locked down.
Yeah.
I think it definitely needs a bit of, why are we doing this? And also this can also be beneficial for you in certain ways. And let's explain that. Let's take some time, and you're really changing my entire work day, my entire way of work. You're changing all of a sudden in the name of security, and you're just, I'm getting so many disadvantages out of it. So really introduce this concept and take the developers with you.
Yeah, that's one thing. A second thing is that every developer is different from each other. So in one company, we can enable a certain rule that couldn't be enabled in another company because they are working in another way or whatever. So engaging and connecting with the developers to make it happen and make it work in the organization is in my opinion, is the most important thing. Because every organization is different from each other. So you are a developer, but you are developing .NET. Others are developing Java or
lots of stuff.
Name it.
Does that exist still? To make a bad joke.
But so everything is different from each other, and that could be that also the security measures that you need to take, that can be different.
Yeah, it definitely needs to, we want to enable this, and just talk to all the different teams, talk to all the different departments, and really make sure that you're not suddenly changing my entire work layout. Because if I wake up one morning and I see that I cannot do my job anymore, or I require 10 more steps to do my work, I will actively work against you. Because what are you going to do next? Next up, you're going to tell me that booting my computer will take 10 minutes because you're scanning everything a million times. It's really, it's a careful step that needs to be taken.
Suddenly you have a red teamer. Then developer becomes a red teamer.
That's also good in an organization if you want to test. But so engage each other, connect with each other, and to see what happened for us as a consultant. Make the developers a user group and have interaction with them to see what things you can do to make the security posture on a higher level in that organization. So it's possible, but you need to connect with each other.
To add on that, to sum it up, is don't move, in my opinion, the problem to somewhere else. Don't block it. I think if I listen to you guys, I would then go for, open up that machine, for example, if it is required really, but keep your monitoring on it.
Yeah.
So if something happened that you didn't expect, or what the ideas was behind, that you can go back at least and see what happened in your environment. I think that would be my take also from this session. Instead of moving it to a virtual machine or to Azure Virtual or somewhere else, because then you also lose your visibility as security in our organization. So,
we have lots of things to do to talk about. We are almost at 50 minutes. So when we start, so let's start with 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. So we're still at almost 50 at the moment. So I think
might as well make it an hour.
It's almost an hour. So I think that's a good start. And there are lots of topics within the DevSecOps environment that we can discuss. If you, as a listener, if you have topics, please let us know. If you want to discuss that with us, please be invited. We have 3 microphones at the moment, but there are 2 others in the back. So if you want to join,
Definitely.
please let us know so we can have a discussion and see what the next steps are within DevSecOps.
Yeah, or if you have a business case, like if you have a question currently going on at your organization that you think it would be interesting for us to discuss that topic from 3 different backgrounds. Yeah, I would love to have that also on the podcast. If you're
really
shy and you don't want to join us, send it over. But if you are more than welcome, I think, to join our session.
Yeah, we are live. We are active on Twitter, or X is it called nowadays. Security Talking, at Security Talking, at LinkedIn, Talking Security, but also email. Reach out, info@talkingsecurity.nl, and we will pick up that question. Or if you want to join, please be invited. And otherwise, thanks, guys, and see each other next time.
Thank you.